on a chilly Monday. Well, it's chilly for me because, yes, I just got back from Washington in October. It was a glorious month in D.C. I wrote a book a few months ago that talks about this subject, and it's based on my personal experiences having been in Washington as bureau chief from 2001 to 2002, having come back to Canada and written political affairs column for the Globe from 2002 through to 2007, and then I was asked to return to the United States in 2007 to cover the American election and what turned out to be the Obama administration. And then they changed their mind again and asked me to come back to take over the Ottawa bureau. This back and forth has allowed me to form an idea about the nature of the two political cultures. And the idea is simply this, that the United States, despite its the tremendous troubles that it has been going through, most of them self-inflicted, remains a remarkably open and resilient political culture, capable of renewal and capable of change from the outside, as well as from within. And that Canadian politics, at the federal level especially, is closed, resistant to outside change, and indeed dangerously stagnant, possibly even in decline, and that this is something we should be worried about. And I got my first sort of glimmering of this idea in Amana, which is a little village about an hour east of Des Moines in Iowa, where I was getting ready to cover the Iowa caucuses. And I think, like most Canadians, I assumed that the caucuses and the primary system was wildly undemocratic. These little states in the middle of nowhere exercised this enormous power to determine who would be the Democratic and Republican nominees for president. And surely you could find a more efficient system for choosing leaders. But there was in Amana, a little town that's about 200 people. Greater Amana has about 700. Talking to the folks a few days before the primary, or the caucuses, and discovered that every presidential candidate for both parties had been to Amana at least once. And I had been covering the campaign for a while, and I knew what these were like. You don't just sort of drive into Amana, wave at your hand, the band plays, and you give a little stump speech, and then away you go. If you want to be president of the United States, A, you have to go to Amana at least once. B, you have to go to the high school gym, the community center, wherever it is, and you can make your little spiel, and then you stay there, and you answer questions for as long as people have questions to ask. And at the end of the meeting, you don't leave, you get down off the podium, and then people come up to you who want to ask a question, but didn't want to stand up and ask you in person. And if you want to lead the free world, if you want to become the most powerful politician on the planet, if you want to be the president of the United States of America, you have to come in Amana. Amana and Iowa, in fact, are like this jury that says, you folks are busy and you have your lives to lead. Well, we are being subjected to this incredibly intense campaign for presidential nominee by both Republicans and the Democrats, and we've given it a lot of thought, and we've taken some time and gone out and asked questions of the leaders, and here's what we've decided. We've decided that in this particular case, an African-American constitutional lawyer from Chicago ought to be the Democratic nominee. It's like a jury that spends time listening to a case and then pronouncing the verdict. And then New Hampshire has its say, and then South Carolina has its say, and then everybody has their say over the course of the coming months. And as we saw, especially the Democratic case, it took till June before the country could make up its mind, at least the Democratic voting portion of it, which leader the Democratic Party ought to have. And the leader that they chose was someone who has very few roots inside the Democratic Party. Hillary Clinton owned the Democratic Party. From every precinct captain in every district in every state owed their position to Bill or Hillary Clinton. The caucus was entirely behind Hillary Clinton. The Black Congressional Caucus was entirely behind Hillary Clinton. And it wasn't until the people began to move that the establishment of the Democratic Party began to rethink its commitment to Hillary Clinton. It was possible through the primary and caucus system for an outsider using social networking to mobilize a large constituency to vote in favor of that candidate. You can do that in the United States. You can't do that here. Only 1% of the population actually owns is a card-carrying member of a political party. It's kind of weird to be a card-carrying member of a political party. That allows the elites of the party to control the leadership selection process. Now, they have factions. So you'll have the Stefan Dion faction, the Michael Thatcher faction, the Bob Rae faction, the Gerard Kennedy faction. But those are factions within a very tiny elite contesting the leadership of the party. The rest of us have no say in it. Another way in which I found that the American system is more open was in the public service. We like to make fun of the fact that the Americans fire the entire senior public service every 4 years. Then the president gets to appoint 7,000 senior officials in the public service, and Congress has to approve 3,000 of them. That leads to great delays. We only got our Canadian ambassador last month. But it also leads to greater openness because you fire the senior ranks of the public service every 4 or 8 years. And the people who are in there are people who the president has appointed, who know the president's mind on these issues, and who will deliver the president's agenda within the department. It also means people come and go. You might be working at a think tank, and then you go to serve in the Secretary of State, and then you leave and go to university, to a private corporation, and then you come back and you serve in the Treasury. You have these people moving back and forth, and of course as they move back and forth, they take the secrets with them. And the secrets don't stay secret very long, because human nature being what it is, if you're sitting in the common room at Harvard and you are under Secretary of the Treasury, you just can't help telling people what really went on in those meetings. And it all ends up in the New York Times or in a book. We don't have that here. The public service is very closed, very elite-driven, very promote from within, very resistant to outside influences. And I will end, because I'm very anxious to hear what Elizabeth has to say about the matter as well, with an observation that David Eaves, he's a young guy. I have a lot of time for David Eaves. You ought to go look at his blog, eaves.ca. He's one of the voices inside the book Open and Shut, which talks at greater length about all of this stuff. The point that David makes, actually didn't make it in the book, he made it later, is that the difference was the revolution. They had one, we didn't. And their revolution led to the idea that the people are sovereign, that it's the people's government. Whereas, of course, the sovereignty in Canada resides with the Queen. And the Queen may choose to tell you what the Queen is thinking, or the Queen may choose not to tell you what the Queen is thinking. And it leads finally to this great cultural shift that in the United States, within Washington, despite the many exceptions, the fact is, if I ask them a question, or you ask them a question, they have to tell us, unless they can think of an awfully good reason why they can't. And if up here, if we ask a question, they don't have to tell us unless they feel like it. And that's the difference between the two countries. That's something we should talk about. Look forward to hearing what you have to say about it. Thanks.